when it's done, there's a stop record button. Once you escape out of this and go back to that window,
okay,
then that will like finalize the recording.
Okay.
good to know.
Is there a way that you can check if we have it set up right, if it's live, if it's broadcasting now?
I'll go
Okay.
ahead and check,
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
just go
let's
do your
know.
thing.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome. All right.
Let's get this a little bit. There's a plug right there. So we didn't need to look.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right.
Good to go?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So I'm Kyle Magida, and
I'm Connor McKay.
we're from the Massachusetts Data Office. We want to preface this first by two things. Our data scientists. We are not designers. Please do not judge our slides. There are not even that many numbers on them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um,
We're here to talk about how we're integrating data with our new website. We are redesigning Mass.gov, and we're using Drupal 8 to do so. And we wanted to talk to you guys briefly about how data is helping us redesign and rebuild the website so that it's more constituent-centric and it helps serve the needs of our customers, which are ultimately the people of Massachusetts, much better. So here's a little bit about us. Data scientists in the data office. I was previously at the city of Boston on their citywide analytics team. So I've been in the data game here in Boston for a little bit.
and I worked at online retailers here in Boston for Wayfair, and then at a startup out in San Francisco called Cherish. Realized I wanted to do less web marketing and more public policy stuff, which I've been in the past. Did a little career shift, and I'm here at the state doing some data work.
Here's just a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be briefly talking about some user journey mapping that we did and some document classification and storage we're doing via DCAN. I'm mostly going to be talking about machine learning here. So for those of you who are uninitiated, machine learning is basically a process where we can take computers and we can show them examples and we can ask them to learn from those examples. We can also take unlabeled data and ask the computers to figure out if there's some structure in the data. And I'm going to be briefly talking about those two main ideas and how we are leveraging those two main ideas to redesign Mass.gov and better deliver services.
And I'm going to be talking about how we can use Drupal and external tools to use the stuff we know, data, to inform the stuff you guys know, design, to really complete that feedback loop and get a sustainable process where good data and good design is actually embedded and encased in the product, so authors who might not know data or design can get the wisdom that we can provide for them.
Yeah, and Kyle's hitting on something really powerful, is that we're trying to design a website for government employees who are not necessarily trained as webmasters, who are not necessarily trained as designers. So we want it to be as easy to make a beautiful and easy to use website as possible. And we need to make sure that that experience is really consistent and scalable across, potentially hundreds of different departments. So let's first talk about where we started with some user journey mapping. So before we started designing the website, we needed to answer the question, what do people come here to do? And there are a lot of ways to answer this question. And sort of the data science-y way to do it is take all of your web sessions and use a technique called clustering, which basically says, I'm going to take these data points and I'm going to place points that are similar together. I'm going to make sure points that are not very similar stay far apart. So you can imagine that if you take sessions on a website and you cluster them, you can start seeing things like the robots that visit your site and only stay for 3 seconds, the people that come to your site and buy a thing every single time they visit, the people that come to your site and just sort of browse and then drop off. So we did this on our web sessions using Google Analytics data to figure out what our main customer types are and inform our top topics, the top things that people come to Mass.gov to do. And we focus on the 10% of sessions, or the 10% of pages, which drove 90% of our session volume. So we weren't looking at all of our pages. We weren't looking at sessions which hit every single page on Mass.gov because we have over 200,000 pages. We were really focusing on what is the top content and what are the main topics within that top content. So again, we use clustering to figure out what these journeys look like. We use an algorithm called PAM. and we used a metric called Gowers coefficient, and we did this all in R. So when we ran this algorithm, we started seeing top topics like this: unemployment, mass health, parks. A lot of these things are not very surprising, but some of them are. Particularly nursing, some of the bar exam stuff. We weren't expecting to see that, but using the data, it really helped to show us that these are important things that people come to the website to do. And it may fly against some of our preconceived notions about what people want to do on Mass.gov, but that's why doing this sort of work is so powerful, because you're really getting at what people are truly doing instead of just going with your gut, which can be good, can be bad. So this little visualization is basically one of the clusters that we found mostly hits on education and people flowing between our portal and sites that sit under our education department. So that really helped us figure out where to go and what to build and what to do first. And as we started building, we started realizing that the majority of our website is not even pages, it's documents. 50,000 documents on Mass.gov. And we need a good way to basically store those documents, make them searchable, make them available for people, and ensure that we can continue to scale and allow people to store their documents, but also make sure that those documents don't clutter up search results, don't get in the way of people trying to use the site and things like that. So we started developing a platform backed by DCAN called Mass.docs. Mass.docs, the goal is being a digital repository for all of our organizational documents. And what we really see as the value in Mass.docs and DCAN is the management of metadata. Documents have metadata associated with them, like what type of document it is, what language it's in, when it was published, how often it's published, things like that. And that really helps people search for documents and find the thing they're looking for. If you can imagine going on Amazon.com and you know you need to buy a brown shoe, all the shoes on Amazon have to have color metadata associated with them for you to be able to find them. And that's really what we're trying to do with documents. Now, the state doesn't really have the time or the resources to classify 150,000 documents by hand using humans. So we needed to develop a way to, as documents come in, automatically append metadata to them. One piece of metadata that's really been powerful for us is figuring out what type of document it is, whether it's a form, whether it's data, whether it's meeting minutes, things like that. So we were using a technique called classification to do this. So we built an ML-powered pipeline that basically takes documents in the front door, does a bunch of different things, one being SVD, the other being what's called extra trees. And it classifies the documents and automatically posts that metadata to DCAN. So every single time someone uploads a document, we're figuring out what kind of document it is and appending that metadata, lowering the bar for authoring and ensuring that people can always find what they're looking for. This is a quick diagram of what that whole pipeline looks like. We're using Amazon Lambdas, which are basically little functions that you can run in the cloud. You pay as they run. You don't have to maintain physical infrastructure for them. And we were able to get scikit-learn to actually run on these. So that was really exciting for us. We're using this in combination with S3, the API gateway, and DynamoDB, as well as SNS topics to move little messages between all of these different functions. And these are the 19 different document types that we're classifying for. And if you know a little math or you know a little ML, we have a CAPA score right now of around 0.71, which is borderline excellent. So we're really proud of this work.
And Connor's not going to mention this, or he didn't mention this, but this is also something that we're hoping to roll out to other places. We have a data librarian on us, and they're actually all taking a road trip out to Chicago to present this at the American Library Association. So this can be used on a lot of things, and our team right now is working on integrating it back into the DCAN API. So this is automated. It's easy. The user doesn't know it exists, but it populates directly into Drupal.
Yep. And one of the little factoids that our librarian dropped on us the other day is that this work has saved around 38 years worth of manual classification. So we're really, really excited with those results, and it means that we can really scale to the degree that we really need to in order to keep our site high quality, keep our information architecture clean, and keep the experience really, really good for our customers. So I'm going to hand it over to Kyle, let him talk about some of the work that he's been doing.
Actually, in the interest of allowing you guys time for questions, does anyone have, we kind of want this to be a little more informal discussion. Do people have questions about what Connor has talked about? Any ideas, tips, tricks? You know, we're new to Drupal. We do not know PHP
Yeah.
and have not touched this before 3 to 6 months ago. So what else is this useful for? Would you have questions about integration? Like, we'd love to have questions. Yeah?
R is a programming language. So it is mostly used for statistical analyses of tabular data. I wouldn't recommend it for large-scale application development or anything, but if you're interested in analyzing data, connecting with databases, and doing statistics, I can think of no better language out there. It's a functional first language. It's really interesting. I would recommend checking it out and downloading RStudio if you're interested in that sort of stuff.
Open source?
It is indeed open source.
If you are, I don't know what you might be familiar with Stata, or we are not the same Stata, but we're in this data center. If you're familiar with Stata, if you're familiar with SAS, if you're familiar with SPSS, it is a free, lightweight, more customizable version of those, in our opinion. You could talk to other people. They might have other holy war opinions, but ours free. That's its defining characteristic.
Yep, it's got a fantastic community of package developers and maintainers who are mostly statisticians. So no, we used, so there's a Fortran subroutine for PAM that's available through R, and that's what we used. Yeah, Fortran, that Fortran.
Anything else?
So how does this hook into search?
So metadata powers search. And by automatically creating metadata, we make our search better, because our authors, at least in the past, had not entered this sort of stuff into the system. And we don't believe a 20-item form to get one document on a website is really a good thing to be designing and putting in front of your users. So we want to lower the bar as much as possible, while also trying to maintain a high degree of like metadata availability and quality.
And again, because it pipes right into DCAN, we don't have any opinion or care really how the search works. It uses the native DCAN filters and search capabilities. Again, a data librarian has added additional fields to kind of enhance that capability, but it's the magic of Drupal. DCAN has a pretty robust search functionality. We help give it a little more.
So the metadata fields that you have, are they sort of a standard set of fields that you decided you wanted to have? Or I'm just curious, like, how did you make that decision about what fields you wanted to populate?
So we have a woman who's trained as a librarian on our team, and she's really informed that schema. She used to work at BHL. She also used to work for the Smithsonian. She has like a long career in cataloging physical entities. And she was previously doing very similar work for the city of Boston, which is where I and my boss met her. So she's basically informed that whole thing.
And she's also leveraging I believe it's OCLC, which is a
Yes.
universal standard for categorized documents, and taking that and bolting a few things on, but taking generally that structure. So not only is it searchable for us, it's searchable for other people who may want to scrape it and use it themselves.
The end goal is that it gets integrated into larger web archives of information and documents, so that this information is more freely available.
So just on a general level, like, your system literally like reads like below the searches for key terms that are going to be
Right. It essentially builds probabilities based on terms that occur in the document. right? So like if it sees a lot of underlines, the probability of this being a form is much higher. If it sees the words like yay and nay, the probability of it being voting is a lot higher. The technique that we're using called SVD basically reduces those term co-occurrences to a much smaller vector of numbers, which is basically just an array. And that's what we pass between the lambdas, because the lambdas only have 1.5 gigs of memory and very limited disks. So we have to be really parsimonious with this sort of stuff. So we use what's called dimensionality reduction and then classification on top of that.
All right, anything else? Here are no objections, moving on.
Okay.
So what I've been working on the last few months has been integrating analytics and getting information from Drupal combined with Google Analytics into useful, usable, and used reports that will go out to be in front of users as they need them. So this is kind of trying to get upfront analytics and allowing for service owners to understand what their pages look like. So to start out, we need information out of Drupal because our whole site's in Drupal and we want to be able to inform our decisions and inform the structure of our system with actual information about that. So we've got a problem. And Harlan is solving it for us. Harlan is our lead designer for Mass.gov. And while it's not sustainable, I have been the data pinata for the design team. Harlan's term. We sit right near each other, and when they need data, which is great for a team of 2 or a team of 5, but we have thousands of pages that we are actively building. We have 200 currently. We're trying to get that down to a more reasonable number, but it's still government. It's still Massachusetts government. There are 43 major agencies, 150 not so major agencies, and then subgroups and commissions. So we're going to have thousands, probably tens of thousands of pages, hundreds of authors. You know, there's turnover, different web person comes in. We have interns this summer. Will there be interns next summer? A lot of different authors. 15 plus different content types, and that's growing. And there are 4 design team members. That is not enough to deal with all the inbound requests or train all these authors in every nuance of what they need to know. So we wanted to get kind of snapshot views for all these people to narrow down on the high value, important work could provide an issue. So in the top chart, I apologize for small font size. You can see kind of the types of pages that have been built out and which ones are getting the most traffic. So you can, and again, this data is kind of for a pilot site, so it's not really actionable yet, but it will be. So you can see the type of pages that are getting the most traffic, what's most important, and then you can see which topics, so general like taxes, unemployment, have relative conversion rates. So how successful are these pages at getting people to what they want? And so getting this information requires a lot of integration of Drupal data with Google Analytics data and servicing that in a meaningful manner. So what do we use? We found an open source tool called Superset. It's supported by Airbnb. It's a dashboarding platform. It's, again, free, which for us allows us to avoid procurement, which I don't know how much experience all of you have in government, but that is a positive if you can avoid procurement. We have it stood up on an AWS service. It is well maintained, thousands of users and a lot of contributors, and supported by a company that actually actively pays people to support it. So it seems to be useful. And the majority of the data we're using right now, piping through there, is Google Analytics data, because we're a website, again, free, and we're able to get the basic information that we have. Currently, in our current state, users have a Google Analytics login, but they don't really use it, so we're trying to make it easier for them to get this information. So why does this matter for you guys? We are integrating this Google Analytics data with an API that we pull out of the Drupal backend. So we have a crack team of developers that are working on this for us. We have a basic API when we're working on more complex ones that surface, the created date, author, title, owner, when it was created, when it was changed, and all this information. Then if you have it aggregated for every page, you can see, oh, well, this author has been writing a lot of pages recently, and pages of this type haven't been created in a month. Like, why is there something wrong with that module? And it takes this amount of time to create this page. Once you get all this data out of the Drupal backend, there's a lot of stuff we can do with it relatively easily. Another really cool thing that we're doing is taking advantage of the parent-child relationship within Drupal, at least for some pages, to essentially create a map of the site in our database. So we have a relationship between its government, its Massachusetts government, 4 different agencies control the same thing and think they all control it. We don't want to get involved, so we say, okay, here's this site, here's this one page, one person maintains it. It belongs under taxes, but it also belongs under SNAP, and it also belongs under unemployment. That's something that we can do, and with this parent-child relationship, we're able to say, here are all these different components that this node belongs to. So it tries to mirror in a tabular SQL-based manner the inherent flexibility of Drupal. And so, yeah.
So is this dashboard superset a separate site with its own database that's importing data from Drupal and putting data from Analytics?
As it stands right now, yes. Yes. As it stands right now, yes. It's a very good segue to my next thing where we're trying to get some of it back in. Right now, we do have an external database. We considered using DCAN as the store of this data. It is still something we may consider, but the number of charts that DCAN allows out of the box is a lot fewer than Superset allows out of the box.
It's also pretty large data, so serving it up through something like DCAN may not be performant.
Yeah.
We have a warehouse basically of all of our analytics data, and we just plop dashboards on top of the warehouse.
Yeah, we're the data team, so we have the structure. We have the structure to do the ETLs and dump it all in a central database. Your mileage may vary. What has worked for us, and we also are using this platform for other things, and so having it stored in Drupal. We're setting up the infrastructure anyways, so having it stored in Drupal is not necessarily a requirement. Anything else? Okay, so we've got this good, reasonably actionable, reasonably useful data. Now we want to get it in front of people when they need it. We want to get the information they need in front of them when they need it, and have it be accurate. So one thing we're working on is integrating dashboards into Drupal. So this is page information, things like traffic, sessions, comparisons to other pages. So if, let's say, we're looking at all pages about getting your taxes done, what pages work the best? And saying, hey, your page doesn't look that great. Here are some things that are often wrong with tax pages, or here are some things that are often wrong with pages in general. Again, looping it back to Harlan using us as data pinata, this is where we use them as design pinatas and have them provide us suggestions of things that tend to be wrong with pages, how to address them, what indicators might be that. If people aren't scrolling all the way down the page. These are all things we're working on in development, but right now it's just how many people visited your page, did they find what they were looking for, what are other pages like in your site, how are they performing? And so our plan is to have a dashboard for each page, or at least most of the pages, most of the nodes, excuse me for the language. And those nodes will be powered by a node ID. Superset allows for embeddable charts with something like with an iframe. It just provides a URL that has a standalone chart that it can be served essentially as an API with the node ID as a input, so that each page can be through a Drupal system that we are working on right now to embed code. Essentially, just say for each page, publish this chart keyed off its node ID, so you get page-specific information on each page in the edit experience. So a user as in an author in one of the 150 agencies can go in, say, hey, here's what I'm interested in. How's this page doing? What has it done? What's good? What's bad? If I want to change it, what page should I look at to change it? If I'm doing really well, I should go show my boss this and get a pat on the back. In the future, we also want to embed some external tools there. Hemingway, crawl the page, and probably more for existing pages, say, how readable is what you wrote here? And because that is a problem that is persistent throughout our reviewing our historical pages. So getting the reading level to the right level, using Crazy Egg potentially to actually embed what people are actually looking at on a particular page. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hemingway and Crazy Egg. Hemingway is a readability score app that says that you give it text, i.e. a page, and it returns you, this is a 6th grade reading level, this is a 7th grade reading level. So you can have the general, like, okay, we're aiming for I assume 6th grade reading level.
Yes.
So you're at an 8th grade level, like, turn back the jargon a little bit. I doubt we're ever going to have you're at a 1st grade reading level, making it a little more complex, but you never know. And also Crazy Egg, which allows for visual tracking and, I guess not visual, mouse tracking, and shows where people tend to go on the page, how far down they scroll, how far up they come, and a heat map for that, so we can see what elements are actually used on a particular page, and giving that information. Again, authors can make a lot of assumptions about what's useful, what's not. They're sometimes right, sometimes wrong. Giving more data allows them to actually make a better judgment there. This is again, not really touched by design mock-up of what this would look like. It'd be embedded in a page-level tab in the edit experience, providing some basic information on the page. I'm sorry, it's not really legible. Describing a conversion, describing a session, saying, well, this page belongs to a couple different topics. How does it perform relative to those broader topics like taxes or unemployment? Like, are you up? Are you down? We're not necessarily sure how actionable this is, but again, this is a work in progress, and it's part of the flexibility of Drupal is that we'll be able to adjust. We don't want to show sessions over time. We want to show conversion rate over time, or we want to show readability score over time, or we want to show the location people come from to this site if it's a parks page or something like that. We're able to adjust those things on the fly and show the users the information they want. Here's another take at it that is a little more visible. You can see the different charts. These are all coming out of Superset, embedded in an iframe in just raw HTML from Drupal, because, again, as I said before, I would not know the first thing about Drupal or PHP, but I can embed a chart in an HTML document. That's why we have Drupal developers. So yeah, this is generally what we're doing. We're hoping to get some more information into different things to get executives the ability to look at everything that's owned under their entire department or agency, to get like a service owner, someone who's in charge of delivering unemployment, get that. There's probably 10 different pages underneath that, be able to see which of those pages is performing and not, getting that comparison and seeing how that's trending over time, seeing where the roadblocks are. And we're working very closely with our design team to figure out the right questions to ask and get the right information in front of them. So that's actually all I've got. Does anyone have, yeah, take questions we've got 20 minutes, so. I would say it'll continue to be amalgamation right now. I think we will open source all the code that we've used to power this. Superset is by far the biggest tool, and that's already open source. We'll open source our ETLs and the schema that we have powering our databases. So you could kind of do a plug and play, but for the Drupal embeds, I don't know. We haven't done that work yet.
It's also difficult to make things that are powered off of things like Google Tag Manager open source and extensible and like something that the community can pick up, unless they're also using all of the same CSS components as us and stuff like that, right? Like if your tag manager is looking for clicks to a specific CSS selector, stuff on your site in order to leverage that. So there's like a certain degree where we can open source certain things and like allow people to use it, but there are other things that are custom to our implementation that it would be difficult for us to really roll out to the community. But we do it, like Kyle said, we intend to make everything open source that we possibly can so that people can see exactly how we're doing it.
I think the real thing that we can definitely open source the ETL, the scraping of the data. I don't know what our plan is to open source the API to pull the page data out. I'm getting a thumbs up from Brian, so we're going to be doing that. But yeah, those have to be building blocks because there's not really much of a point of us or really ability to open source how we build the charts because what you care about, but I do care about. We both care about getting the data in to a database and then figuring out how to visualize it, and all that process is open source. And the embed process can be open source, so it'll still be a building block scenario. Yeah.
Have you looked at other states and how they're handling the same issues?
No, no, we have not. That's a good idea.
We've spoken with the federal government and we've spoken with their analytics team about how they deploy Google Analytics. We're running into some challenges surrounding deploying Google Analytics on third-party applications that are not under the Mass.gov domain. It's not the easiest thing to figure out. One of the suggested ways is basically malforms the URL. And we don't really want to do that. It appends like a bunch of information, like a session key to the end of the URL, and that's what we want to do. And I don't think that's like a great ask for people who maintain other applications. So we've spoken with them, we've heard what they do, but it's not as laser focused on conversions and tracking people throughout their entire journey and things like that. They take more of a meta level at how people go between sites and what documents they're downloading and stuff like that. So we've learned some stuff, but we haven't deployed that much that is informed by other people. We've mostly been rolling our own.
I think I did remember we did talk with Texas briefly.
Oh yeah.
And I think that they're fairly representative for at least half of the states is that they outsource this. And so they go to a web marketing agency that gives them reports out of Google Analytics. And I'm guessing that is relatively common. But we haven't, the comparison to other states was done before we got here in terms of what type of platform to use. I do know that there's not many other data offices out there, so I'm not sure how much there's the bandwidth to do this in other state governments. But the ones that I do know of are, they put a tracking pixel on their site and have a third-party vendor give them that information back.
What would you recommend the first step to do? A large website, how you have analytics, how you have the web asset tool, how you then install. What's like step one? Explore superset.
I think figure out what you want to know. Figure out what's actionable. For us, it was the page level data because that's where authors are working. And that's where we have the biggest need because we go from the the team of 4 designers making the content pages to hundreds and hundreds of users. And so that's where the data had the most use. Beyond that, then I would say something like a superset. There are a lot of other options out there. We picked this one for our own reasons, but a way to visualize that data and figuring out where you want that data to be visualized. But yeah, I would say know the question you want to ask, and then that'll start leading to the answer. If it's
for using Google Analytics and dashboarding solutions like this, you really gotta you want to look at, but also ETL the data out of Google Analytics, and that is not easy, particularly from getting a view of individual level session data out of Google Analytics. So we've done a lot of work to apply a client ID to people and to apply a session ID to people. If you are interested in doing Google Analytics, Simo Ahava, I don't know how to say his name properly, but he has a really, really great blog on Tag Manager and Google Analytics and how to sort of break the sampling that Google tries to do. So the first step is to sort of implement that stuff, make sure you're getting individual level data, grab that data out of Google Analytics and store it in some sort of relational database so that you can plop a dashboard on top of it and start visualizing that. Because you can't, making an API call to Google Analytics every single time you want to make a new chart. If they're sampling the data in a different way, your numbers are going to change all the time. That's not very good. People are going to say that your data is all wacky, and they're not going to really like it.
And it also depends how complex your site is. We have the tree structure essentially that crosses, and so we need to roll it up. If you really only have information on the page-by-page level, then maybe just surfacing the node ID or the page title in Google Analytics as an event or something that capture that data through Tag Manager, then you could just continue to use Google Analytics if it's just you. If you want to push it out, then you have to, that's why I went this route of trying to make it be a publicly accessible dashboard that pulls out the particular information. More elaboration on Connor's point. We were mentioning R earlier. There's a really good R Google Analytics platform. Our Google Analytics package, thank you.
No worries.
No words. That allows for very easy scraping of data from the Google Analytics API.
It's called our Google Analytics, all one word.
So is DCAN powering some section of Mass.gov today?
Yes, it is Mass.docs. So yes, so that is a fully DCAN-backed platform. We've applied some of our style called Mayflower to Mass.docs. It's at docs.digital.mass.gov. Yeah, that is fully DCAN.
I'm kind of interested in the organizational level. Where did this process start? Organization was like, this needs to happen.
I'm going to interrupt you right now because half of them are leaving. Harlan. Harlan and Brian.
Yeah, we have a chief digital officer who was previously at MAPC, which is basically a data organization that does public policy research. So she came in the front door. She was our first, she first led the data office, and now she is our chief digital officer. So she runs all digital services. She's believed in data since long before she got to the Commonwealth, and has been really instrumental in building out the data team, appointing our principal data scientist who's currently running the data team, and really moving data forward in terms of as an organization within digital services and within the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret. The secret sauce is Holly, Harlan, Brian, and everyone else in charge running Mass.gov wanted it without needing the convincing. That's not a satisfying answer for trying to get it to happen, except find the right people. But that's why. Anything else?
Well, you guys can email us anytime if you have any additional questions. You can look us up.
Brian.
I'll just make a quick shameless plug to say that if anyone here wants to work with smart, amazing people like Connor and Kyle,
We are.
Yeah, so if you want to email us anytime, you can look us up on Twitter as well. We both have Twitter accounts. Be happy to talk to any of you guys afterwards or offline about really anything, how we're using Drupal, how we're using data, how we're using ML, really anything.
ML is machine learning, just
Yep.
out of.
Sorry. Cool. Thanks, everybody.